Hi, and welcome to this episode of Snake Clips. Today we're going to teach you how to handle snakes. Stay tuned and maybe you'll learn something. Okay, and this is what we call our python stick. And it's extra wide here so that it will, when you hook the snake, it will actually go across a couple ribs so you won't hurt the snake. And right now I got my albino Burmese python in this container, and he wants to come out. And what's nice about this stick is it's long, it has two nice grips on it, and I can just reach in here and I can manage the hook underneath him, and I can pick it up. This will help to get him out. As you can see, he actually wants to come out. He likes to play. So I'll hook him a little bit more. Pick him up here. And there he is. Now with him, the problem is getting him back in. So right now, this stick is a little large for me to use. So what I have made is I made another stick. I cut down that big long stick and made a shorter one here, which is what I like to really use. As you can see, he just wants to come over and kind of come up and play with me. Like I said, as you can see, the smaller version is actually a lot easier to use, and it beats having to bend down and pick him up. Now when I want to put him back in his container, what I'll do, again, because he likes to come out and play. Now that he's out, he thinks he's going to be out for a while. Doesn't realize it. But I'll get the front part of him. I'll hook that. Then I'll get the back part of him and support his body in three different spots here. Pick him up, slide him back into the container. And again, he really doesn't want to go back in there. Give him my stick back. Unhook his tail. They usually hook their tail on something like this. Kind of prevents you from moving them. We'll get him back in the container. And that's one of the handling methods we use with the big python sticks. I'm going to talk about the use of a snake stick. I think that everybody who owns a snake should own a snake stick. Snake sticks are something that helps you to pick a snake up. It will help you to grab the snake from its enclosure without putting your hand in there. Many times I've gotten bit changing the water. When I reach into a snake's enclosure, I scare it. But when I use a stick, I don't do that. Basically what you do is you would take the stick, you would hook it underneath the snake, and you would pick it up. At this point, once the snake's up in the air, he feels a little more secure, and he doesn't normally want to strike at you. Now, one of the other methods is called tailing, and tailing basically is used a lot of times with venomous snakes. And what I do is I usually start in the middle of the snake, and I will grab it and I will pick it up and grab its tail. At which point then the front of the snake I will pick up with the stick, and I will hold it up like this. By doing this, I'm controlling the front of the snake. He feels a little more secure because he has 2 points of contact. Okay, this next snake I have here is a Everglade rat snake, and as you can see when I take the lid off, he's very, very aggressive. So there's a few things we can do to use different tools that we have in order to handle an aggressive snake. One of the tools I really like to use, and a lot of people think you're wimpy for using them, but is a pair of gloves. A nice little pair of gloves like these are very inexpensive, and it allows you to reach in and grab the snake very quickly without getting bit, because these gloves are leather and his teeth cannot penetrate them. So what I'm going to do now is you watch, he is very aggressive. We take the lid off his enclosure, and he's gaping and he's looking to strike. But you see, with the gloves here, he really can't do any damage, even though he's trying. And what we'll do is we just reach down and we pick him up, and he can't hurt us because we have these gloves on. That's one way we can do this. The other way is we take these gloves off here and we use what's called a pinning stick. And a pinning stick is basically a stick. and it has a soft surgical rubber here, which is going to allow us to pin his head down. And as we pin his head down very carefully, it allows us then to reach around behind him and pick him up behind his neck. And then we can pick the snake up and we can handle him and we can move him. But as you can see, he doesn't like being restrained, and most snakes don't. So when you hold him behind their neck, they definitely are going to try to bite at you. Okay, now here's where we use a combination of a couple things in order to handle snakes. Now, there are specific gloves that I use. I showed you a pair just before of just leather gloves. They work very well for non-venomous snakes. But this here is a copperhead, and he is a venomous snake, so I want to use a pair of gloves that are going to be specially designed to be puncture-proof. I'll use the cheaper version, which are animal handling gloves. They're both by Hex Armor, but the animal handling gloves are not designed to withstand a bite from a venomous snake. A fang may penetrate them, so you really don't want to use these gloves for holding venomous snakes. The gloves you do want to use, they're called needle stick gloves. And needle stick gloves, you can actually take a syringe and stab the gloves, and it will bend the needle over. They're actually designed with Hex Armor, which are very, very tight woven hex-shaped patches. And these patches are offset, so even if a fang were to go between the first one and the second, it would get caught in the second or the third layer of these gloves. These gloves, I do not guarantee would withstand every snake bite there is, but I wear them all the time, and I have never had a fang or a tooth from any snake penetrate them, so I personally do trust them. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you that I will use these gloves with this copperhead, but again, I'm using a couple things in conjunction. One of the things, again, I'm using is my trusty snake stick that I love so well. Now, as you can see here, he's through his log, and he's over by his water bowl. So right now, in order to really handle him properly, I need to get that log out of there. So what I've done is I've actually drilled 2 holes, and I do this to all my venomous snakes, who their hides, 2 holes in it so I can reach down with my 24-inch hemostats, and I can pick that log up without sticking my hand in there. This allows me room to work so that I can get the snake out without due stress on the snake or due stress on me. Now what I'll do with my hook again is I will simply move it toward the center of his body. I will try to slide it under him without aggravating him too much. Now hoping he's going to move forward, because with my gloves on I'm going to want to reach in and grab him toward the base of the tail, like I said before, and I'm going to use this part of the hook to hold the front part of his body up. This basically keeps him from wanting to strike at me, and if he does, where the hook is on him, that's all the strike distance he basically has. But I'm going to let him go now, and I have the gloves on, so even if he were to take a bite at me, he wouldn't be able to get through. Now what I have to show you, these are called tongs, and tongs are used to grab snakes, and you can squeeze it to hold the snake here. Now I hate using tongs, but I do own them just in case I have a situation that I have to use them. They are very good for getting snakes out of bushes, grabbing them in long places. The tongs can come in different sizes and length. As you can see here, we could reach down pretty far with one of these and grab a snake. Reason I really don't care for these too much, though, is because they do put pressure on the snake. This specific one is designed to be wider so that the snake doesn't have as much pressure on just 1 or 2 ribs. It's spread over a distance. But once you put pressure down on a snake basically becomes aggressive. So I hate using these, but I do own these because they are something that a professional has to have and has to use every once in a while. And some of the other way of handling snakes basically is just not to be rough and aggressive with a snake. Even fast, aggressive snakes, if you handle them gently, generally don't want to strike at you and hurt you, because snakes aren't out to get you. As you see here, this snake took a strike up as soon as I opened it up because he's afraid. But I'm going to reach in extremely, extremely slowly. And this here is a black racer. And black racers can be noted to be a little bit nippy. But as you see, I take him out very carefully, very slowly here. And we're going to hold him down here. We're going to support his body so he has plenty of support. He doesn't feel like he's going to fall. And you can see that he's not trying to bite me. He's just simply hanging out. He's flicking his tongue around, trying to see what goes on. And this snake here I have is actually a garter snake. And you would think a garter snake would be an easy, simple snake to handle. But garter snakes are sometimes very quick to bite you. And this guy here is no exception. He's very fast, and as you watch, if I try to tail him, he will thrail his body around. You see how he thrails around? He is very unhappy. He's trying to get loose. He wants to latch on to me, and I'm not going to let him. But as you can see, tailing this type of snake is not a very good thing to do. He's very quick, and he's trying to escape. And if I grab him, he will repeatedly bite me over and over again. So that's why basically I try to sneak up on him. Now you wonder how a snake that's been that active in trying to get away and stuff, I could pick up and try to hold without getting bit. Well, now what I'm going to show you to do is, as I showed you how he trailed around before, we're going to get him slowly here. We're going to get it center of his body. There he goes over the top. And what I'm going to do, hopefully he won't bite me, is I'm going to move very, very slowly, pulling him back very slowly until his head gets to the edge, and then he gets right behind his head like this, and I hold him. And as you can see, though, he does want to bite me. He has his mouth open, but I was able to keep him from striking at me as I pulled him slowly back into my hand. Now, some of the other things we do is when we mess with venomous snakes is we use what's called a cover box, and this is a cover box here. Now, believe it or not, I wasn't drunk when I made this. I just was in a rush when I cut the handle, so it kind of looks like a Fred Flintstone prehistoric type of thing. But the concept of the box works very well. What we're going to do is take the snake out, cover it over. I like to use something I can see in here. So what we're going to do right now is, the first thing I always do is I like to still wear on my left hand, because I'm right-handed, my bite-proof gloves. I'm going to slide the lid off, and again, I have right here, I use my hemostats. I'm going to reach in and I'm going to pick up the hide that we have our canebrake rattlesnake in. And as he's looking up, I'll set the hide down. Now again, I wear this glove on my left hand, so if he were to try to take off, I could put my hand in there and grab him. What I'm going to do with the hide now is slowly stick it over top of him, wiggle it so he gets his whole body in, because you want the cover box to touch the ground so he doesn't sneak out from underneath it. Okay, now his hide's back in there. I'll put the hemostats away. And again, we slide the lid on. And as my wife said, the most important part is to put that lock back on that tank so that snake never gets loose. Once it's locked, my wife feels that she can sleep better now. Now this next tool that I'm going to show you is kind of my own invention. What I do is, it's a little overkill for what I'm using it for right now, which is an Amazon tree boa. But for venomous snakes and for very aggressive snakes, it's something you can use even with your bigger snakes to keep them from biting you if they strike at you a lot. And what it is, it's a shield. And I make them out of plexiglass. They're 1/4-inch plexiglass. And they got a nice little handle on them here. And I can take this, and if I need to reach in now and adjust his lattice so he can climb, if I stick my hand in right now, he's going to try to bite me. But I can use the shield, put it up here. He's not going to be able to strike at me. I can set his lattice back up like that. And also, as I'm working, if he's getting aggressive and I need to just stick it over top of him, I can put it right over top of the enclosure to keep him from striking up. These work extremely well. Again, all they're going to do is pretty much block my heat signature from him, and if he does strike at me, he's not going to be able to get me. I like them clear so that I can see through them. I can see exactly where the snake is. I can do whatever I have to do, and he's not going to be able to strike at me. These are great things to have. When you open up a Venomous tank, if I'm trying to get the water bowl, I will use the hemostats to grab the water bowl. I can use this to set over the top while I pick out the water bowl. I can use a second one of these if I want to put in this way and actually box the snake in somewhat, at which point I can get his water out without having to worry about him biting me. And now we're going to show you what we call tubing a snake. And normally we do this to venomous snakes, but what we're going to do is show you how we tube snakes. And what you do is basically you'll take the snake, and if you can, you try to get him to go into the tube. And this is one of the ways we do this. Try to get his head in there. But of course, as you can see, he doesn't want to. So we'll slowly get him to put his head in there, like that. You get up on him very quickly so he can't come back out, and then you slide him into the tube, at which point now, if this was a venomous snake, we would be able to hold him in the tube. We would be able to work on his body, maybe help him shed if he needed shedding issues.